releases, we were able to kind of build this culture of performance across hundreds of brands and hundreds of different teams.
I think you did something interesting as well, which is you took the couple approach that everyone is talking nowadays, and you used that in order for different agencies, because you had 5 different teams at some point collaborating, right?
Yeah, so we had 3 different development teams. So we had one for the consumer health, one for the pharma. We had a platform team. We then had 2 design agencies who were building the front-end design systems. We were using Acquia Site Studio for that. And then there was an incumbent development partner as well. So everybody was contributing code to this, and managing that process and allowing config for all those different features was quite a challenge.
Sounds like a nightmare to me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nick. Is there anything, because you were talking, Julian, about having a brand with its multi-site kind of splitting the code base. However, your approach was more like having everything on the same code base for different requirements. Is there anything that you will have done differently, with today's knowledge? There is always something, but on this particular...
I mean, maybe the actual infrastructure underneath and how we deploy that and how you roll out changes to the platform might be slightly differently. I think the Drupal side of it worked really well. There are some tweaks with how the front-end agencies could have brought updates to their packages as well. But we were investigating the ability for even more development teams to sort of have a limited set of APIs they could use to build their own custom modules and include those, almost using like a composer-based build process at build time to bring in other stuff as well.
Cool, thank you very much, Nick. Like about 1,000 websites, hundreds of brands. If you think that's impressive, it's because you haven't seen this one.
Yeah, our journey started like 6 years ago. We had more than 2,000 websites built in many different languages, hosted everywhere. So we started with standardization, globalization, and trying to share as much as possible in our business. So as you know, Nestle has many global brands present in more than 50 markets, but we also have local brands specific to each market. There are brands in Spain that are not present here in the Czech Republic. So to do so, we came with, first of all, we developed our Drupal distribution, which is called LineNest. And basically, we tried to gather as many integrations. We have many products that are Nestle related specifically, so we had to build all those integrations. And we've been working on developing some front-end components. So all that, we package that in our distribution. And then depending on the type of business, we would have different solutions. The first task we got from our leadership was to try to masterize as much as possible. And what we call masters, it would be the equivalent to a multi-site. It's a group of sites sharing the same functionality, the same governance model. Probably the cost is coming from the same place. And normally we do that for global brands, such as KitKat, Nescafé, all those brands. So to do that with multi-sites, we have this master-child approach, where we have the functionality that is shared between the different childs. So each one of the childs, they could disable their functionality. To do that, we have many different partners. I see some of them here that help us develop these master approaches. On the other hand, we have also single sites where the functionality is so specific to that market and that brand that they cannot be part of those multi-sites. And then a third option that came recently last year to our team is our site builder. We found the opportunity of having specific basic templates where we could share between different brands, and they could easily enable or disable some of the functionality and also create their own custom brand style. So to do that, what we did is we worked with an agency as well to develop this site builder where the brand owners, they could just create their own CSS, their own brand style, include their fonts, and of course their content, and they will have their own site. And we treat this as a master site. They're going to be sharing the same code base, the same theme, and they are able to customize as they need.
When you are talking about site builder, give us a little bit of context, because I think it's a specific UI that you built using the APIs from different vendors, from Akia, from Pantheon, I think it's quite impressive what you have built in there.
Yeah, so in general, we started with Akia Cloud Site Factory at the beginning for the masters, and this is a specific case for the site builder we use in Pantheon, and we use in Pantheon upstreams.
That you like most, of course.
I can say that. I like all our vendors the same. So yeah, we created we call it a wizard. It's a configuration wizard where you could choose, you can select which is your brand, you can create your brand style with your own look and feel, with your fonts, with all the configuration you need, select which modules you want, which front-end components you want, and through that wizard, you will just add all the information you have. Even you can add connection to different products we have in Nestle. And then in a matter of minutes, you'll have a site with demo content ready for you to just include your content, your files. And our objective in the end was having a site live in 24 hours. We haven't been able to do that yet, but I think we launched a site in 1 week, which is kind of impressive for us because normally the time to go live with a site is, the time and the cost to go live with a site for us, it was like 3-4 months for each one of the sites. So it was a big change for us. Right now, this project was launched last year, and we're working on adoption, and it's going quite well. So yeah, working on that right now.
I think the numbers are impressive because the audience may think, a week to launch a site. Actually, in the enterprise where you have so many requirements, you have a specific from different business unit, it can take months actually. Can I ask you how long it's taking so far to build this, if you can say, to build all this site builder and all the functionality?
I think the agency that developed this is here, so they might know exactly the time, but it was like around 3-4 months of actually building the
Actually, that's
the
quite
site
impressive.
builder. Yeah.
And is there anything you would do differently?
Well, yeah, we found that we tried to add as much flexibility as possible, but it's never enough. So yeah, probably we should have been more. We should have opened it a bit more because sometimes they have specific requirements that won't match the current approach that we're following. So if I could go back, probably we'll try to add a bit more flexibility there in the theming and the selecting front-end components and look and feel. Because in the end, a brand marketing teams they care about how a website looks and that it performs. They don't really care about how it's built. So sometimes we get specific requirements that we can't meet right now, but we're working on that.
I like that you are talking about governance because now I would like to go to Susan and Buddy. Governance is one of the biggest issues when you are working at this level in enterprise. And you have to be careful because if you don't apply a good governance and a good UX for your editorial, costs can escalate exponentially. I think you have a lot of good experience, Susan, on the UX experience. And talk us a little bit about your project and challenges.
Yeah, sure. So this is a project that our team at Evolving Web worked on with the University of Waterloo. And like a lot of universities, they have 900, not quite 1,000, I think the number was 950 websites, and a team of maybe 15 people doing everything from DevOps to training for site owners across the university. So we were brought in as consultants on the project, so their team actually built out a new Drupal 9 platform, and our role was to help them plan the migration, both to Drupal 9 and to Pantheon custom upstreams. So to kind of prototype that process of deploying and migrating, and then also to build the migrations. And what I really liked about their approach is that when they were building out this platform, they didn't build it out in a bubble. They did a lot of usability testing with different types of site owners across campus to see if the new tool set they were building was actually going to work for them. And the two challenges they were really trying to solve were governance, both governance related. One in terms of more the DevOps governance. It was really a clunky process to deploy and update all these websites, and so they needed something that was more automated and that took less of the burden, that took the burden off of the development team to do those updates and really make the decision more one about governance, like should we be building a new site, should we be deploying a new site, rather than just the nuts and bolts of how. So that was one thing that it just helped to get onto a platform like Pantheon. It helped really solve that problem with more standardized tooling. And then the other governance problem was really around content governance, because in the past they had more than one type of install profile, and people were trying to create new sites just because they had a new event rather than building that content into an existing site. And a lot of the time it wasn't really necessary to build a new site, it was just that the whatever configuration they had on their existing site didn't allow them to create something as simple as a landing page that would create a good campaign page for something like an event. So they just had a problem around governance of, why are we creating new sites? Is it because we really need them, or because we're just trying to get some content up that the site won't handle? And so what was happening is sometimes people would go off and create, a Wix website just because they were, or like some other site builder tool they were using, non-Drupal, just to try to get what they wanted to do accomplished. So yeah, having a more standardized approach helped with the brand consistency and accessibility, but also it was a really good time to address some of these content governance issues they were having.
What do you think about the relation between governance and technology? For example, let's say that technology allows you to go quick with a microsite, spinning up a new site, and what's the relation between both?
Yeah, I think if we let technology lead a project, a lot of the times we don't strike that right balance between the flexibility and the consistency. So sometimes we just get excited about, layout builder, we can give people all these options, and then they have too many options and we lose the consistency. So letting governance lead a little bit more, having a plan, really thinking about the purpose of things, this can help. And having the extra year to plan migrations to Drupal 9 was really helpful to give people this time to think about governance.
What do you think it was the biggest challenge on this project? Just to finish with you.
The biggest challenge.
Actually, I will give you two options. You answer that one, or what would you do differently? Because I've been asking the same questions to everyone. I think it's not fair.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest challenges, I think, is just defining what those components are that you give to your content editors. So when you think about things from a content editor perspective, if you're given this huge menu of options of what kind of content am I going to be creating, it can be overwhelming. And as you add more and more sites to a platform, it gets tempting to just add more and more options. And so the question of where do you draw that line is a hard one, especially when you're just trying to get through the migrations. And you get to the end of the process when you're handling the more tricky websites that don't fit in the template. That's when I think some of these hard decisions come up.
Thanks a lot, Susan. Buddy, I was asking everyone to give me a slide with a few points.
Yep.
And
sorry, I didn't follow the guidelines.
You're killing me.
Yeah, I know. I am not even sure we can play it. I don't know. So the thing is, the case study that I brought here today is also a pharmaceutical company, and I can really name the name, and I can talk about it. And what I think it is interesting, because I knew who I was with here in the panel and with whom I was talking to. And I don't know about you, like, we don't have to be Nestle or any of these large companies to be able to do this. We can also do this if we are a little bit smaller group of, or like a smaller company. In this case, Schwab, a team that I'm going to show you, is only a couple of minutes. They are only 2 people, and they are only marketing people. And they had this big vision because they had like the WordPress sites out there, the Typo 3 sites, everything was a mess. So when any time there was a GDPR change made, like how do you do that? Like how do you handle all this stuff with the different brands? So they have 16 different markets, a lot of brands. So they are 2 in marketing, and they say, hey, let's fix it, because what is actually, when does it make sense to do multi-site? So for us, it was like, if you have 10 or more sites, then you should be thinking about creating a product that then has features, and with all the issues and things that we talked about earlier. And it takes us only 15 minutes to go live with a site. And I'm not joking with that. I can show you that using Site Factory, And the client here is in full control without any IT people nor their vendor. So they can really go, because we've created demo content, so the only thing that they have to do is to fix the content, which is of course not easy. So I brought just a very small case study to show, or like a small video to show it live, and I hope that it helps, and if you want to talk about it a little bit more in details later, but if you can play it.
I think we can play. I think we have the first in the whole 40 minutes, I think technology is going to work. Oh.
That's good.
Let me try again.
And it took 3 months to put the first 10 sites online.
The Schwabe Group is a manufacturer of plant-based pharmaceutical and health products such as the well-known brands Lasea, Umkalawabo and Demonin. With a successful history of more than 150 years, they employ over 4,000 specialists in 16 countries and have a turnover of more than 900 million euros. When the Schwabe Group contacted 1x Internet, their websites were inconsistent and run on different platforms with different providers, leading to high maintenance costs and complex regulatory compliance. To fix this, 1x Internet implemented a scalable, multi-site Drupal solution in only 3 months. The entire system can be managed centrally with customizable templates, shared digital assets and security features. The online presence of Schwabe Group achieves consistency with reusable assets that are available to all their brands and markets. A new web page for a product or campaign can be set up within minutes. Automatically following corporate guidelines, editors can easily upload content. No programming skills are required, as editors can use campaign templates and choose assets from a central library. They are optimized for performance and SEO with consolidated tracking of metrics like brand awareness and visibility. The award-winning solution uses our 1x DXP multi-site management system. Based on Drupal, it offers enterprise features in the areas of security and scalability, which makes it easy to integrate third-party solutions. The central design was set up with Schwabe Group requirements using Storybook. For the central dashboard and hosting, we used Acquia Site Factory.
Yeah, so I hope this a little bit explains it, but what is really challenging here is that every single brand, they used to have their own sites, and they used to work with their own vendors in their own countries. So of course, like bringing them up to speed here and tell them that they are going to get something bigger and more is a big challenge inside of the company. So we used actually one of the sites we created as like a product site, and I've seen this for the University of Edinburgh. I don't know if anybody is here from the University of Edinburgh, but it's about like creating also a page that explains everything about your multi-site system. So it's not just because the editors need to be able to use it, and they can only they will only be happy if they can use it. So therefore, like create pages that actually explains everything: how to put up, how do you go into Site Factory, how do you create a new site, and how do you like create users, and how do you create put in more modules and so on. So that was it was crucial in this case. Again, we have 2 people working in this team on the client side. And it was like a small, we did this in 3 months. So it doesn't have to be very complicated if you do it just nice. But but the programming part is only part of it. And using like custom upstreams, Site Factory, or any of these tools actually solves that, because we heard that before. Like that's what Nick is doing in his job. Thank you. But the really hard part is the governance part, and making the client understand that we will not add this feature in just because you used to have that feature.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because sometimes you have to be strong on telling the customer no, because things can escalate quite easily. What would you do differently, just to keep?
Actually, in this particular case, I would not do anything differently. The client is now I think they're going live with the 30th or the 40th site. They have saved extreme amounts of money that they had before, because they were hosting everything everywhere and all this stuff. So in this exactly setup here for this client, I would exactly replicate that again and again. Saying that, it's not that easy always. So you have to be careful, and I know how it is in working in Nestle, and this is it has to go through security scans and all this stuff that takes months, and so it is also not always easy. But if you're a small team, you can still do it this way with good success using either one of the tools that are out there.
You're probably building on top of the experience that you've had in the past with similar projects.
Yeah,
That's
we
why,
created a lot of, like from Drupal 6, where we were just doing it like the multi-site way. Obviously, that's not done that way now.
Thank you very much, Buddy. I wanted to bring like all this diversity. Hope you have seen different partners, different companies. I don't know if my boss is here. I hope I'm not fired after this. But I think that's the point. Like, see the power of multi-site, the capabilities, what you can do, and especially what you can do at the enterprise level. We have finished with enough time for questions. I have like a few questions that I could ask randomly, but I prefer, if there are any questions in the room, I could take them.
Can you estimate how many dev hours were used to build the 10 sites in 3 months?
Yeah, so actually the project was probably the first MVP was probably 1,000 hours or something like that. And that was an MVP, and we could go live with the first easy brand. So now we are talking about brands that are, we have a PIM and a DAM now because we need to be able to have centralized assets. So we are adding shop functionality in because some of the brands, they're like, you can't shop actually pharmaceutical stuff online, but you can like have an apothec finder, pharmacy finder and stuff like that. So they invest, and that's another thing. If you're running something like that, make sure that you need probably at least the same budget every single year. If not, just double the budget every single time, because you will need to, the more, it's also a lot of work. So I would say 1,000, if that helps.
And for all 10?
Yeah, because it was very clear, the brand is, if you can go on the sites, the brands, they look different. And using Storybook, we could just create templates. So what the global marketing manager does that you didn't see, he goes in and he creates it with the site factory, then he goes in and then he selects the brand and he selects the demo content and then that's already set. So now he can then just start so that's pretty simple. Happy to demo this down in our booth for anyone that wants to actually just take a look.
Thank you, Buddy. Any other question? How is your voice?
Do you have any practical tips or do's or don'ts around managing the configuration around tens or hundreds of sites?
That's a good question.
So I think one thing to think about is your team structure. So I think we were in a position on the project I worked on where we had multiple teams contributing to the same platform. So this kind of feature-based approach, we had to compartmentalize our config. If it was one small team, maybe we would have gone with a full config export to start with, and then try to featureize it, if you like. The other thing that we quickly sort of moved to was separating our core features from our front end, and because we were using Site Studio, we were able to take our front end as packages, and we had two different design teams that were building those packages, and we could actually combine those at deploy time almost. But yeah, I think it really does depend on your team and what they're comfortable with, what they've used before. Because I mean, I'm using this approach now on another multi-site. It's only 4 sites, and it works well, so it scales down as well. But those developers know that process, and it's not straightforward. There are lots of caveats and things that will trip you up. So I think coming to your points about current challenges, it's having a standard way of doing configuration at scale and configuration at smaller scale as well. There's no one answer, and you've got to find what works for you, really.
Do you think all this hype and is deserved about front-end applications, about decoupled, is that going to make it easier for example, the configuration management issue at this scale?
Well, I don't think decouple makes anything easier, personally. I think in some respects it will. I think we'll all have to, become more familiar with lots of different technologies. I think there's a move at the moment to look at more progressively decoupled things. So Drupal does a really good job of front end really, if you make use of what we have. And what I've kind of learnt on these projects as well is that you need to have an interaction between your developers and your designers. And those designers need to understand how to build design systems. So on this project, we actually had design architects. We had our technical architects, our design architects, and they were doing the task of working out what those components would be, how would they scale to different brands, what configuration is needed. And the developers, they were part of that process to understand the capabilities of Drupal and how that can apply to design as well.
Thank you very much, Nick. I think we have like 1 minute. Instead of getting any questions, sorry, I will let you, if you want to add anything or if you would like to, Susanne, I think you are eager to.
Yeah, one thing I would add, because I know we talked about pharmaceutical examples, the Nestle case study, and then higher education, but one other real use case is government. And one challenge I've seen with government that we haven't brought up is maybe in moving to a multi-site platform. Often I find government clients are the least likely to be willing to change and improve things. So often what we see is, moving to a new platform, the solution that's arrived on is, well, we have all this legacy HTML and we're just going to move that to the new platform. And that will allow us to have a heterogeneous content on each of these 1,000 websites. And that is an approach that I find very problematic.
So in a way, you are talking that maybe we need kind of education team to, get the customer used to.
So often it's seen like, well, we don't want to change the content editor's workflows. We don't want to change their tooling. We want to give them the tools that they already have, but on this new thing that we're calling Drupal Multisite. And so what's great with corporations or organizations that are more forward-thinking is that they want to add a better tooling, but you can't just take that for granted. I think with government, it's often something we have to sell and convince them to do.
Thank you very much. Again, thanks a lot. I'm super lucky to have you on this roundtable. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm sorry that we don't have enough time for all the questions that I know you have. If you have any questions that you want me to send them, I'm in the Pantheon booth. Come, I will get your questions. I will show you how our new decouple solution works. I will give you the best t-shirt on the DrupalCon, probably one of the best. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.